The warning sirens should have been screaming across every human colony. Emergency broadcasts should have filled the airwaves. People should have been running through the streets in panic. Instead, Commander Sarah Chen almost choked on her morning coffee as she watched the transmission from Luna Base 7. On the main screen, a tall alien with purple skin and too many eyes was giving what appeared to be the most serious speech of his life. Admiral HFY of the Galactic Council wore enough medals to sink a small ship. His voice carried the weight of authority that came from commanding fleets across star systems. "People of Earth and her colonies," the alien announced, his words translated by systems that had been silent for 3,000 years. "The sacred truce that has protected your species from the consequences of your actions has ended. You have violated the terms of your containment. You have spread beyond your assigned boundaries. You have interfered with the natural order of galactic civilization." Sarah took another sip of coffee. Around her, the morning shift crew stopped their work to watch. Someone in the back made a joke about the alien's dramatic pause. A few people chuckled. "Therefore," Admiral HFY continued, "the combined fleets of the Galactic Council hereby declare war upon the human species. You have 7 solar rotations to prepare your defenses and make peace with whatever gods you worship. We come not as conquerors, but as instruments of justice. Your crimes against the galaxy will be answered." The transmission ended with impressive display of the alien fleet. Ship after ship filled the screen, each one larger than anything humans had built during the early space age. The formations stretched across space like metal clouds, their weapons gleaming with deadly promise. The aliens had clearly put effort into making this display as terrifying as possible. Sarah set down her coffee mug and looked around at her crew. 23 people stared back at her, their faces showing everything from confusion to barely contained laughter. Lieutenant Torres was the first to break. "Did that guy just declare war on us?" he asked, pointing at the now blank screen. "Like actually declare war?" "I think so," Sarah replied, pulling up her communication panel. "Let me check the networks and see how Earth is handling this." What she found made her laugh out loud. The alien's serious declaration of war had lasted exactly 47 minutes before someone on Earth turned it into a meme. The hashtag Alien Karens was already trending across the solar system. Someone had edited Admiral HFY's speech to include subtitles like, "Sir, this is a Wendy's, and I want to speak to your planetary manager." Social media exploded with jokes. "Aliens really chose violence after 3,000 years of silence," read one popular post. Another showed a picture of an old human military recruitment poster with the text changed to, "The galaxy needs you," to laugh at angry aliens. The official government response came 3 hours later. President Martinez appeared on all channels, looking like she was trying very hard not to smile. Behind her, the flags of Earth and her colonies hung with dignity that the situation probably didn't deserve. "My fellow humans," she began, "we have received a declaration of war from species we haven't heard from in 3,000 years. While we take all threats to human safety seriously, we want to assure everyone that there is no immediate danger. Our defense forces are prepared and have been for quite some time. We ask that everyone remain calm and continue with their daily activities." She paused, and for just a moment, her professional mask slipped. "We also ask that you please stop uploading memes about our potential alien visitors. It's not helping diplomatic relations." But the memes kept coming. Someone found old footage of the original contact 3 millennia ago and set it to comedy music. Others created mock movie trailers with titles like Aliens 15 We're Back and We're Cranky, and Independence Day. 47, The Snooze Awakening, back on Luna Base 7. Sarah's communication panel lit up with calls from across the solar system. Mars Command wanted to know if they should take the threat seriously. The asteroid mining stations asked if this meant they needed to come home. The Deep Space Monitoring Post reported that yes, there really were alien ships heading their way, and they looked exactly as outdated as expected. "Commander," called out Specialist Kim from the sensor station, "I'm picking up chatter from the alien fleet. Want to hear what they're saying?" Sarah nodded. The translation systems kicked in, revealing conversations between alien ships that were clearly not meant for human ears. "Are they mocking us?" asked one voice full of confusion. "The humans appear to be..." "Laughing," replied another. "Perhaps this is how they express fear." "Fear?" A third voice sounded doubtful. "Sir, I've been monitoring their communications. They've turned our declaration into something called a meme. I'm not entirely sure what that means, but they seem to be enjoying themselves." Sarah exchanged glances with her crew. Lieutenant Torres was grinning now, and even the usually serious Chief Petty Officer Williams looked amused. Admiral Kethvar wants a status report, continued the alien chatter. What do I tell him? Tell him the humans received our message and are celebrating. There was a long pause in the alien communications before someone said, "This is not how invasions typically begin." Sarah turned off the feed and looked at her team. These were good people, trained soldiers and technicians who had spent their careers preparing for things that might never happen. They knew their jobs and they knew their equipment. What they probably didn't know was just how much their equipment had improved over the past few centuries. "All right, people," she said, standing up from her command chair. "I know this seems like a joke, but let's treat it seriously. Run full diagnostics on all defense systems. Check our communication links with Earth and the outer colonies. Make sure our sensors are tracking the incoming fleet accurately." "How long until they reach us?" asked Torres. Sarah pulled up the tactical display. The alien fleet was moving at what they probably considered an impressive speed. To human eyes, it looked like they were taking a leisurely cruise through space. "At their current rate, about 6 days," she replied. "Maybe 7 if they stop for bathroom breaks." This got another round of chuckles from the crew. But they went to work with the professionalism that had made Luna Base 7 one of the most respected installations in the solar system. As they worked, Sarah couldn't help but notice how smoothly everything operated. Their systems responded instantly. Their sensors could track objects smaller than molecules at distances that would have been impossible just centuries ago. And their communication networks could coordinate with every human installation from Mercury to the edge of the solar system in real time. The aliens were in for quite a surprise. As the shift continued, reports came in from across human space. The alien fleet was indeed approaching just as promised. They moved in perfect formation, broadcasting their presence like a parade. Their ships were large, impressive, and exactly what human intelligence had expected based on 3,000-year-old technology. What the aliens didn't know was that humans had been watching them for centuries. Every piece of alien technology that had been left behind during the original contact had been studied, reverse-engineered, and improved upon. Human ships had been visiting alien worlds for generations, always carefully hidden, always learning. The 7-day deadline the aliens had given was more than enough time. Sarah suspected that 7 minutes would have been enough time, but the aliens didn't need to know that yet. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Righteous Purpose watching the tactical display with growing confusion. The human solar system spread before him like a 3-dimensional map. Each planet and station marked with symbols his computers had spent decades analyzing. According to his intelligence reports, humanity should be cowering by now. The species files, last updated 3,000 years ago, described them as barely capable of basic spaceflight. Their weapons were primitive chemical explosives and simple energy beams. Their ships moved using controlled explosions that pushed them slowly through space. "Status report," he commanded, his forearms crossed behind his back in the traditional pose of Zephyrian authority. Captain Veltar, his intelligence officer, consulted her datapad with obvious discomfort. "Sir, the human response has been unexpected." "Explain." "They appear to be treating our declaration of war as entertainment. Our communication specialists have translated several thousand of their messages. Many contain something called humor, directed at our fleet and our intentions." Kethvar's primary eyes narrowed while his secondary eyes continued watching the display. "Fear can manifest in strange ways among primitive species. What of their defenses?" "That's where the reports become difficult to understand, sir." Veltar's voice carried the uncertainty that had been spreading through the fleet for the past day. "Our scouts report energy signatures that don't match our predictions." "Show me." The main display shifted to show sensor readings from the human system. What Kethvar saw made no sense. Where the reports indicated small, simple installations, the sensors showed massive energy outputs. Stations that should have been minor research posts were generating power levels that rivaled major military installations. "Are our sensors malfunctioning?" he asked. "We've run full diagnostics 3 times, sir. The readings are accurate. The humans appear to have significantly more infrastructure than our records indicate." Kethvar studied the display more carefully. The third planet, Earth, showed signs of massive industrialization. Not the primitive factories his reports described, but something far more advanced. The energy patterns were unlike anything in the galactic database. What about their ships? Our reports indicate they should have crude chemical propulsion. Captain Veltar hesitated. Sir, we haven't actually seen any human ships yet. What do you mean? Our scouts report that human space appears to be empty of vessels. No ships are visible anywhere in the system, but the communication traffic suggests they have extensive space-based assets. This was impossible. No civilization could operate extensive space infrastructure without ships. The mathematics of logistics alone made it unfeasible, yet the energy readings suggested exactly that kind of operation. Perhaps they're hiding their fleet, suggested Commander Nexip from the weapons station. Primitive species sometimes attempt to appear weaker than they are. HFY considered this. It was possible, though it would require more sophistication than the humans were supposed to possess. Continue monitoring. What about their military response? They've made no visible preparations for war, sir. No mobilization of forces, no evacuation of civilians, no requests for aid from potential allies. In fact, their communication traffic suggests they're continuing normal civilian activities. Overconfidence, HFY decided. They believe their isolation has made them safe. 3,000 years of peace have made them soft. But as he said it, something nagged at him. The original contact reports, buried deep in the military archives, contained details that had always puzzled him. The humans had agreed to the truce too easily. When faced with the overwhelming might of the Galactic Council, most species either fought desperately or begged for mercy. Humans had simply negotiated. Sir, called out the navigation officer, we're approaching the outer edge of their system. The small ice planet they call Pluto is directly ahead. Excellent. We'll begin with a demonstration of force. Target their research stations on Pluto. Make it clear that resistance is futile. The fleet began to take attack formation. 200 ships arranged themselves in the classic Council battle pattern, with heavy battleships leading the assault and support vessels providing cover. It was a formation that had conquered star systems across the galaxy. On the tactical display, Pluto appeared as a small, cold world with several research installations scattered across its surface. According to their intelligence, these were minor scientific outposts studying the planet's composition and serving as early warning stations for approaching objects from interstellar space. Weapons range in 30 minutes. Sir, reported Commander Nexip. Good. Begin charging the plasma batteries. We'll give them a show they won't forget. But as the fleet drew closer, the sensor readings became even more confusing. The research stations on Pluto were generating enormous amounts of power. What should have been small scientific installations were showing energy outputs that suggested major industrial complexes. Captain Veltar, are you certain these are research stations? His intelligence officer rechecked her data. According to our files, yes, sir. 3,000 years ago, Pluto served as humanity's outermost observation post. Simple telescopes and basic life support systems. And now? Sir, the energy readings suggest something much larger, but I cannot determine what, HFY frowned. It was possible that humanity had expanded their research operations over 3 millennia. Even primitive species could accomplish significant construction projects given enough time. But the power levels seemed excessive for scientific work. Perhaps they've turned their research stations into military bases, suggested Commander Nexip. It would be a logical defensive strategy. Against what? They've had no enemies for 3,000 years. But even as HFY said it, he wondered, what had humanity been doing during their isolation? The truce had forbidden them from leaving their solar system, but it hadn't restricted their activities within it. Sir, we're picking up more communication traffic from the human installations. Should we attempt to jam their signals? No, let them communicate. Fear spreads faster when people can share it. But the translations that came through suggested anything but fear. The humans on Pluto were discussing the approaching alien fleet with what could only be described as casual interest. Someone mentioned that it had been a while since they'd had visitors. Another person wondered if they should prepare a welcome ceremony. Most disturbing of all, someone asked if they should take it easy on them and make it look good. Make what look good? What did that mean? Sir, we're detecting some kind of activity around Pluto, called the sensor operator. Energy patterns are shifting, but I can't determine the source. Elaborate. It's as if the planet itself is waking up. HFY stared at the display. Pluto hung in space ahead of them, looking exactly like the frozen ball of rock and ice it had always been, but the energy readings continued to climb, and now there were gravitational anomalies that made no sense. Time to weapons range? 15 minutes, sir. Continue the approach. Prepare to fire on my command. Whatever the humans were doing, whatever they had built during their isolation, it wouldn't matter. The combined fleet represented the military might of 17 different species, refined through centuries of conquest and warfare. No single system could stand against such force. But as they drew closer to Pluto, Admiral LaughHFY couldn't shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong. The humans should be panicking by now. They should be sending desperate messages, begging for mercy, offering to surrender. Instead, they seemed to be getting ready for company. Captain Rodriguez watched the alien fleet approach through sensors that could count the rivets on their ships from 3 light minutes away. From her position aboard the Earth defense platform Dauntless, she had perhaps the best view in the solar system of what was about to become the most one-sided battle in galactic history. "How long since anyone's fired a shot in anger out here?" she asked her weapons officer. "About 400 years, ma'am," replied Lieutenant Commander Singh. "That was the asteroid pirate thing near Jupiter." "Right. And how long did that last?" 37 seconds, ma'am. But they surrendered after 12. Captain Rodriguez nodded and turned her attention back to the tactical display. The alien fleet was impressive, she had to give them that. 200 ships arranged in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with the kind of polish that suggested they spent more time in parades than actual combat. "Ma'am," called out the communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from Pluto Defense Command. They're asking if we want to handle this one, or if they should take care of it themselves. Tell them to go ahead. We'll watch from here and see if they need backup." The truth was, Rodriguez felt a little sorry for the aliens. They clearly had no idea what they were flying into. For 3,000 years, they'd assumed humanity was contained, isolated, and primitive. They had no way of knowing that during those same 3,000 years, humans had been very, very busy. On her display, the alien fleet began its attack run on Pluto. She watched their ships charge their weapon systems, primitive plasma cannons that humanity had abandoned centuries ago. Their targeting systems locked onto what they probably thought were simple research installations. What they were actually targeting were the most sophisticated military installations in known space. "Ma'am, Pluto Defense is requesting permission to engage," reported the communications officer. "Granted. Tell them to try to leave a few alive for questioning." "Yes, ma'am." The battle began exactly at 14:32 ship time. The aliens opened fire with everything they had, plasma bolts and energy beams lancing out toward the Pluto installations. For a moment it looked like the research stations might be completely destroyed. Then Pluto fired back. What the aliens had mistaken for simple research buildings revealed their true nature. Massive defensive weapons emerged from what had appeared to be solid ice. Energy shields that could have protected entire planets sprang to life around installations that suddenly showed their true size. And from hidden bays carved deep into Pluto's surface, the human fleet began to emerge. Rodriguez watched the aliens' formation dissolve into chaos as human ships appeared literally out of nowhere. Stealth technology that bent light around the vessels made them invisible until they chose to reveal themselves. And when they did, they moved with a grace and speed that made the alien fleet look like it was standing still. "My God," whispered Singh. "How fast are they going?" "About 30% of light speed," Rodriguez replied casually. "Standard patrol velocity." The alien ships were trying to return fire, but they might as well have been shooting at ghosts. Human vessels danced between their weapons, moving in patterns that seemed to ignore the basic laws of physics. What the aliens didn't know was that humanity had figured out how to manipulate gravity fields centuries ago. "Communications. Patch me into the alien fleet's command frequency," Rodriguez ordered. "Ma'am, should we offer them a chance to surrender? Let's see how they're handling this first." The alien communications filled the bridge of the Dauntless. Panic, confusion, and disbelief crackled through the translation systems. "Where did these ships come from?" demanded one voice. "How are they moving so fast?" called another. "My weapons can't lock onto them." "They're everywhere." Admiral LaughHFY's voice cut through the chaos. "All ships maintain formation. Continue the attack!" They cannot have that many vessels. But they did, and more kept coming. From asteroid belts that had hidden entire fleets. From space stations disguised as chunks of rock. from installations that had been invisible to alien sensors. The human response wasn't just overwhelming, it was impossible. Rodriguez checked the timer. The battle had been going on for 8 minutes and already half the alien fleet was disabled or destroyed. Human weapons cut through alien shields like they weren't there. What had taken the aliens centuries to develop, humans had improved upon and made obsolete in decades. "Ma'am, we're receiving a priority message from Admiral Chen at Luna Command," reported the communications officer. "Put it through." "Captain Rodriguez, are you monitoring the situation at Pluto?" "Yes, ma'am." "Front row seats." "Good. Make sure you're recording everything. Command wants a full tactical analysis for the history books." "Already on it, Admiral. Though I have to say this feels more like target practice than a battle." That's what the Pluto defense commander said. He's asking if they should make it last longer to give the aliens more combat experience. Rodriguez almost laughed. The human fleet at Pluto was toying with the aliens now, disabling their ships with surgical precision instead of destroying them outright. It was like watching adults play with children who thought they were dangerous. "Ma'am," called Singh from the weapons station, "the alien fleet is trying to retreat." "All of them?" "Well, the ones that still can. Looks like about 30 ships out of the original 200. Rodriguez watched as the surviving alien vessels attempted to break off from the engagement. They accelerated away from Pluto as fast as their primitive drives could manage, broadcasting desperate messages about regrouping and calling for reinforcements. The human fleet let them go. "Why aren't we pursuing?" asked Singh. "Because we want them to report back," Rodriguez explained. "The whole galaxy needs to know what happens when you pick a fight with humanity." She opened a channel to Pluto Defense Command. "Nice work down there. Casualties?" "None on our side, ma'am. We've got about 100 alien survivors in custody. Their ships were built for show, not for fighting. Half of them surrendered once they realized what they were facing. And the other half kept trying to ram us. We had to disable them for their own safety." Rodriguez shook her head. The aliens had come expecting to face primitive humans with basic technology. Instead, they'd encountered a civilization that had spent 3 millennia preparing for exactly this moment. The retreat was becoming a rout. The surviving alien ships fled toward the edge of the solar system, their communications filled with reports that their commanders would never believe. Ships that appeared from nothing, weapons that ignored their defenses, technology that seemed to break the fundamental rules of physics. "Ma'am, we're picking up interesting chatter from the fleeing aliens," reported the communications officer. "Let's hear it." The alien voices filled the bridge again, but now they carried fear instead of confidence. "Command, you need to update the human files immediately." "Update them how?" "Everything we know is wrong, everything. Their technology, their numbers, their capabilities, all of it." "That's impossible. The Truce has kept them contained for 3,000 years. Then they've been very busy during those 3,000 years. Rodriguez smiled. If only the aliens knew how busy humanity had really been. While they'd been patrolling the galaxy and assuming their superiority, humans had been learning. Every piece of alien technology left behind during the original contact had been studied and improved. Every alien transmission intercepted and analyzed. Every weakness cataloged and prepared for. The aliens had made one critical error. They'd assumed that isolation meant stagnation. They had no idea that for humans, isolation had meant motivation. "Captain," called the sensor operator, "the last of the alien fleet has cleared Pluto's orbit. Should we track them?" "No need. Our deep space monitors will follow them home." Rodriguez settled back in her command chair. "Besides, I think they've learned enough for one day." The battle was over. 17 minutes from start to finish. Just as the betting pools back on Earth had predicted, the alien fleet had been utterly defeated, not by superior numbers or overwhelming force, but by technology and tactics that were simply beyond their comprehension. As the human fleet around Pluto began to return to their hidden positions, Rodriguez couldn't help but wonder what Admiral LaughHFY was thinking right now. His great armada had been brushed aside like an annoying insect. His declaration of war had become a demonstration of just how far behind the galaxy had fallen. The 3,000-year truce was indeed over. But it hadn't ended the way the aliens expected. Admiral LaughHFY sat in what had once been his command chair, now surrounded by human guards who treated him with the kind of polite professionalism that somehow made his defeat even more humiliating. The Bridge of the Righteous Purpose looked exactly the same as it had 3 days ago, except now human officers worked alongside his remaining crew, studying alien technology with the casual interest of students examining outdated textbooks. The human in charge was a woman who had introduced herself simply as Dr. Elizabeth Vasquez, Earth's chief xenobiologist. She didn't wear a military uniform or carry weapons. She didn't need to. Her guards did that, and they did it with equipment that made Galactic Council military gear look like children's toys. I have to say, Admiral, your timing is interesting, Dr. Vasquez said, settling into the chair across from him. We've been expecting this conversation for about 800 years now. Expecting it? Kethvar's voice carried the confusion that had plagued him since the disaster at Pluto. How could you know we would declare war? Because we've been watching you. All of you. The Galactic Council, the member species, your political movements, your military developments, your economic policies. Did you really think we spent 3,000 years sitting quietly in our solar system? She gestured to one of her assistants who brought up a holographic display showing the galaxy. But this wasn't any star chart Kethvar had ever seen. This one showed shipping routes, military bases, political boundaries, and industrial centers across dozens of star systems. It was intelligence data that should have taken centuries to collect. You see, Admiral, the truce wasn't a punishment. It was a gift. We gave your civilization 3,000 years to develop, to grow, to catch up with us. We hoped that when we met again it would be as equals. Catch up? Kethvar's secondary eyes focused on the display, while his primary eyes watched Dr. Vasquez. Your species was barely capable of interplanetary travel when we first made contact. That's true. We were still using chemical rockets and nuclear weapons. Very primitive stuff. She smiled in a way that made Kethvar uncomfortable, but we learned quickly. It's one of our more dangerous traits. Dr. Vasquez nodded to another assistant who began bringing up files on the display. Technical specifications, ship designs, weapon systems. All of it was alien technology, but improved far beyond anything the Galactic Council had ever developed. Every probe you sent to monitor our solar system over the past 3 millennia, we captured and studied. Every piece of technology you left behind during the original contact, we reverse-engineered and improved. Every communication you broadcast across the galaxy, we intercepted and analyzed. The display showed human ships unlike anything in Kethvar's experience. Vessels that could bend space around themselves, weapons that manipulated matter at the quantum level, defensive systems that existed partially outside normal spacetime. This is impossible, Kethvar said quietly. No species could advance this far without the resources of multiple star systems. You're right. We couldn't. So we got them. The display changed to show star charts that made Kethvar's blood run cold. Human installations throughout the galaxy, mining operations on uninhabited worlds, research stations in empty star systems, a network of hidden bases that span thousands of light years. We've been your neighbors for over 1,000 years, Admiral. We've walked among your people, traded in your markets, studied in your universities. We've been invisible because we wanted to be, not because we had to be. One of the human guards stepped forward and handed Dr. Vasquez a data pad. She glanced at it and nodded. For example, the Zephyrian Military Academy where you trained. Professor Telnox, who taught advanced tactics for 30 years. He was human. Captain Rindar, who served with distinction in the Fourth Border War and received the Council's highest decoration for valor. Also human. The civilian freighter captain who sold you information about human shipping routes last month. Definitely human. Kethvar felt the world spinning around him. Everything he knew, everything the Council knew, had been carefully managed by the very species they thought they were containing. Why? He asked. Why go through this elaborate deception? Why not reveal yourselves centuries ago? Dr. Vasquez leaned forward, and for the first time her expression became serious. Because we were hoping you would evolve. We thought that given enough time, the galaxy might develop into something worth joining. A true confederation of equals, working together for the common good. She gestured to the display, which now showed political maps of the galaxy. Wars, conquest, slavery, genocide. The same patterns of violence and oppression that had characterized galactic civilization for millennia. Instead, you got worse. The strong continued to prey on the weak. Species were enslaved or exterminated for the crime of being different. Entire worlds were stripped of resources to fund wars of expansion. The galaxy requires order, Kethvar said. falling back on the arguments he'd heard all his life. Someone must maintain stability. Order built on oppression isn't order, Admiral. It's just organized cruelty. Dr. Vasquez stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the human fleet that now surrounded the remnants of his armada. We tried to guide things subtly. Human agents in your governments pushing for reforms. Human scientists sharing discoveries that could have ended poverty and suffering. Human diplomats working behind the scenes to prevent wars. And you ignored it all. Every attempt at progress was met with suspicion. Every offer of cooperation was seen as weakness to be exploited. Every hand extended in friendship was bitten by someone who saw kindness as an opportunity for advantage. The display changed again, showing what appeared to be Council military records. But the details were wrong. The classifications too high, the information too complete. We know about the planned extermination of the krill species, Dr. Vasquez said quietly. We know about the slave farms in the outer rim. We know about the weapons, tests on inhabited worlds, and the cleansing operations against populations that refused to submit. HFY's forearms trembled. These were state secrets known only to the highest levels of Council leadership. Information that could destroy governments and topple civilizations. How do you know about classified Council operations? Because we've been in your government for 800 years. We've been in your military for 600 years. We've been in your intelligence services since you created them. Dr. Vasquez turned back to face him. Did you really think the second in command of the Council Intelligence Division was actually Altarian? The implications hit HFY like a physical blow. If humans had been embedded in the Council's most sensitive positions for centuries, then every operation, every secret, every plan was compromised. The entire galactic power structure was built on information that humans had allowed them to have. You've been controlling us, he whispered. No, Admiral. We've been watching you control yourselves. Every choice your civilization made, every path you chose to follow was yours to make. We simply made sure we were prepared for the consequences. Dr. Vasquez returned to her chair and pulled up a new file on the display. This one showed the recent declaration of war, but with additional context that made HFY's defeat even more complete. When the Council decided to end the truce and declare war on humanity, we had 3 hours advance notice. Not because we intercepted your communications, but because the Council member who proposed the idea works for us. The Admiral who planned your attack strategy reports to our intelligence division. The engineers who designed your new weapons based their work on technology we gave them 50 years ago. Then why didn't you stop us? Because we decided it was time. Dr. Vasquez closed the files and looked directly at HFY. 3,000 years was long enough. If galactic civilization wasn't going to evolve on its own, then it needed help. She stood and gestured to the guards, who stepped forward to escort HFY back to his quarters. But before they could move, she spoke again. The war you declared is over, Admiral. It ended the moment your fleet entered our solar system, but the real choice is just beginning. Your civilization can join us as equal partners in building something better, or it can continue on its current path and face the consequences. And if we refuse? Dr. Vasquez smiled, but there was no humor in it. Then you'll discover why we call ourselves the children of a death world, and why every species that has ever faced us in open conflict has either joined us or become extinct. As the guards led him away, HFY realized that the war had never been about conquest or territory or resources. It had been a test, and his entire civilization had failed it completely. The question now was whether they would learn from their failure or repeat it. 6 months after the Battle of Pluto, Admiral HFY found himself in a conference room that had been carved from solid asteroid rock somewhere in the space between Mars and Jupiter. The location was symbolic, he'd been told. This was where the new galactic government would be born, in the empty spaces between worlds, built by cooperation rather than conquest. Across the polished table sat Commander Sarah Chen, the same human who had laughed at his declaration of war from Luna Base 7. She looked remarkably relaxed for someone who had just dismantled the entire structure of galactic civilization. Thank you for coming, Admiral, she said, gesturing to the chair across from her. I know this situation is difficult for you. HFY settled into his seat, his forearms arranged in what he hoped was a diplomatic posture. Around them, the walls of the conference room displayed a view of space that showed the new reality of the galaxy. Human ships moved freely between star systems. Alien vessels that had once patrolled trade routes now served as escorts for humanitarian missions. Worlds that had been strip-mined for resources were being restored by technology that seemed to work miracles. Difficult doesn't begin to describe it, HFY replied. My entire understanding of the galaxy was wrong. Not wrong. Incomplete, Commander. Chen activated a holographic display that showed the original Galactic Council territory, alongside humanity's hidden expansion. Your people built an impressive civilization, advanced technology, complex social structures, efficient trade networks. You just forgot that civilization is supposed to serve its people, not the other way around. The display changed to show the reforms that had taken place over the past 6 months. Slave worlds had been liberated. Oppressive governments had been replaced with representative systems. Species that had been considered lesser were now equal partners in the new galactic community. How many died in the transition? HFY asked. Fewer than you might think. Most of your leaders chose cooperation once they understood the alternative. Those who didn't, Commander Chen paused. Well, they're no longer in positions of authority. The transition had been remarkably bloodless considering that humanity had essentially conquered the galaxy in less than a year. But it hadn't really been a conquest. It had been more like removing a bandage that the galaxy had grown around, painful but ultimately healing. What happens to the Council species now? Do we become your subjects? That's up to you. Commander Chen pulled up a document that made HFY's secondary eyes widen in surprise. It was a treaty, but unlike any document he'd seen in his centuries of military service, this is the Galactic Cooperation Accord. It establishes a new form of government based on voluntary association and mutual benefit. HFY read through the terms with growing amazement. There were no tribute payments, no territorial concessions, no acknowledgement of human superiority. Instead, the treaty created a system where each species contributed their strengths to the common good, while maintaining their independence and cultural identity. You're not demanding our surrender. We're not interested in ruling you. We tried that approach for 800 years through our embedded agents and it didn't work. People have to choose to be better. We can't force them. The treaty outlined a structure that was elegant in its simplicity. Each species would maintain control over their home systems while participating in shared projects for the benefit of all. Human technology would be freely shared with anyone willing to use it responsibly. Disputes would be resolved through mediation rather than warfare. And if we refuse to sign, Commander Chen's expression became serious. Then you'll be welcome to continue governing yourselves as you see fit, but you'll do it in your own territory without the ability to harm others. We've learned that isolation can be an effective teacher. The choice was clear. Join the new galactic community as equals, or return to their home systems and stay there until they develop the wisdom to handle the responsibilities of galactic citizenship. What about our military? Our traditions of honor and service? We need those traditions, but we need them directed toward protection and exploration rather than conquest and oppression. The display showed new fleet compositions where human and alien ships work together. Your people are natural warriors, Admiral. We'd like you to help us defend the worlds that can't defend themselves. HFY studied the treaty terms more carefully. Humanity was offering everything the Council had claimed to provide: peace, prosperity, security, but actually delivering it. No species would be forced to give up their culture or identity. No worlds would be exploited for the benefit of others. The strong would protect the weak instead of preying on them. Why trust us? We declared war on you. We came to your system intending to destroy your civilization. Because everyone deserves a second chance, and because we understand that fear makes people do terrible things. Commander Chen leaned forward. Your species spent centuries afraid that someone might be stronger than you, so you made sure to stay on top through force. Our species spent 3,000 years afraid that we might become monsters, so we isolated ourselves until we were sure we wouldn't. She activated another display showing the careful process humanity had followed during their expansion. Every world they'd visited had been studied for years before contact. Every species they'd encountered had been observed and understood before any interaction took place. Every piece of technology they'd shared had been tested to ensure it would help rather than harm. We're not perfect, Admiral. We've made mistakes and we'll make more, but we learn from them and we try to do better. That's all we're asking from anyone else. The conference room door opened and Dr. Vasquez entered with a group of representatives from various species across the galaxy. HFY recognized some of them. Former council members, military leaders, civilian officials. Others were completely unknown to him, probably from species the council had never bothered to contact. The other founding members of the new galactic community, Commander Chen explained. We've been working together for the past few months to establish the basic framework. What followed was the most remarkable negotiation of HFY's life. Instead of the usual power struggles and territorial disputes that characterized council meetings, this was a genuine collaborative effort. Each species contributed their expertise and perspective. Disagreements were resolved through discussion rather than intimidation. The Altarians offered their expertise in agriculture and biotechnology. The Centaurans contributed their knowledge of energy systems and stellar engineering. The Vegan Federation shared their advanced mathematics and computer science. Even species that the Council had barely acknowledged as sentient brought valuable insights to the discussion. And through it all, the humans facilitated and guided without dominating. They had the most advanced technology and the largest fleet, but they used their power to enable others rather than control them. We're calling it the Galactic Community rather than the Galactic Council, Dr. Vasquez explained during a break in the negotiations. Councils make decisions for people. Communities make decisions with people. By the end of the day, the basic structure was in place, a loose confederation of independent systems, bound together by shared values and mutual support. No single species would dominate the others. No worlds would be exploited for the benefit of distant powers. The strong would protect the weak, and everyone would contribute according to their abilities. HFY signed the treaty with the ceremonial stylus that had once sealed council declarations of war. But instead of conquest, this document promised cooperation. Instead of dominance, it offered partnership. What happens now? He asked as the ceremony concluded. Now we get to work, Commander Chen replied. There are refugee populations to relocate, damaged worlds to restore, and new technologies to share. Plus, we've detected several potential threats from outside the galaxy that we'll need to prepare for together. She smiled, and HFY realized it was the same expression she'd worn when watching his declaration of war 6 months ago. Not mockery, but genuine amusement at the absurdity of the situation. Besides, Admiral, there are children on Pluto now. Human and alien kids playing together in the stations you attacked. They're going to grow up in a galaxy where cooperation is normal, and war is a historical curiosity. We need to make sure we don't disappoint them. As HFY left the conference room and looked out at the combined human and alien fleets training together in the asteroid belt, he couldn't help but think that perhaps the 3,000-year truce had been worth it after all. Not because it had contained humanity, but because it had given them time to become the teachers the galaxy needed. The war was over. The real work was just beginning.